My wife kissed her ex in front of me as a joke while she was being recorded, so I left her on the street and now she begs for mercy. People of Reddit, there is a level of human shamelessness that simply disconnects you from reality and makes you see things with absolute clarity. I am writing this sitting at the kitchen counter of my new apartment, drinking black coffee and looking at my phone, which has been vibrating silently for hours with messages from the person who thought she could use me as her personal doormat. I need to unload all this garbage here, leave a record of the humiliation they tried to put me through, and tell you how I made sure the joke cost her absolutely everything she cared about. My name is Andres. I am 28 years old. I am an industrial refrigeration equipment maintenance technician. It's a physical, heavy job, dealing with giant compressors and ammonia leaks. I'm not a man of many words, I never have been. I prefer to observe, understand how things work, and act accordingly. I don't like yelling or drama. If a machine makes too much noise, I turn it off and look for the fault. That same natural patience and coldness helped me not end up in jail on the worst Friday of my life. I was married to Lorena. She is 26 years old. We had been married for 3 years. Lorena is one of those women who live and breathe for the attention of others. She works in public relations for an event company, which further fed her need to always be in the center of the hurricane. I tolerated her vanity because I thought it was just a phase, something that would calm down over time. But vanity doesn't calm down, it feeds. The real problem started about 3 months ago. Lorena started going out much more often with her group of friends. They were 4 women who seemed to compete to see who made the worst life decisions. I started to notice that Lorena, even when we went out together, had the habit of seeking the gaze of other men. If we were in a bar, she would laugh too loudly with the bartender, touch the arms of the guys who approached us, and always left a door open for flirting. One Sunday, very calmly while we were having breakfast, I set a boundary. I told her that her attitude made me uncomfortable, that it made no sense that, being married and with me by her side, she felt the need to flirt with strangers at parties. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't forbid her from going out. I just asked for basic respect for our relationship. Lorena looked at me as if I had asked her to stop breathing. She immediately got defensive, but then let out a sarcastic laugh and told me I was exaggerating, that she was just being friendly, and that my insecurity was my problem. What I didn't know until weeks later was that she took that conversation, took it out of context, and sold it to her friends as if I were a jealous monster. She told them I was obsessed with her, that I wanted to control her, and that I couldn't stand other men looking at her because I knew she was too much for me. The climax of all this rot happened this past Friday. It was the birthday of one of her friends. They rented the VIP area of a pretty exclusive nightclub downtown. I didn't want to go, I was tired from work, but Lorena insisted, saying that if I didn't go, her friends would think I was punishing her. I decided to go to keep the peace. We arrived at the club at 11 at night. The atmosphere was dense, full of smoke, strobe lights, and deafening music. From minute 1, I noticed the mocking looks from her friends toward me. They whispered when I passed by, they laughed. Lorena ignored me completely. She went to the dance floor, drinking shots that other guys bought her. I stayed in a corner, drinking a beer, observing everyone's behavior. At 1 in the morning, the surprise guest appeared. Roberto, Lorena's ex-boyfriend. A 30-year-old guy, the kind who lives in the gym and has no brains. It turns out the friends had invited him on purpose. When Roberto arrived, the group of friends formed a circle on the dance floor. Lorena was in the center. Roberto approached her. I was about 5 meters away. I could see everything with perfect clarity. Lorena's friends took out their cell phones and started recording the scene, pointing at them and, out of the corner of their eyes, at me, waiting for my reaction. Lorena looked me right in the eyes. There was malice in her look, pure and unadulterated provocation. Then, she grabbed her ex-boyfriend by the collar of his shirt and kissed him. It wasn't a brush. It was a passionate, grotesque kiss, in front of me and in front of the whole club. Her friends burst into screams. They started jumping and chanting loudly, so I could hear them over the music. She deserved it. She deserved it. For being toxic. They expected me to lose my mind. They expected me to run toward them, to punch Roberto, to scream at Lorena, and to make a scene so they would have viral content on their social media about the crazy and obsessive husband. But I didn't scream. I didn't move a single muscle in my face. The disgust I felt was so deep it completely anesthetized me. I left my half-finished bottle of beer on the marble bar. I turned around, walked toward the club exit at a calm pace, paid for the parking ticket, and went home. I didn't call her. I didn't send her any text messages. I got to the apartment, took a cold shower, and sat in the dark living room. At 2 in the morning, my phone notified me of several mentions on social media. I opened the app. Lorena, feeling untouchable and emboldened by the alcohol and her friends, had uploaded a bunch of stories to her public account. In the videos, she could be seen dancing extremely provocatively, rubbing against several unknown men on the club's dance floor. In one of the videos, where she appeared kissing a random guy's neck, she put a text in giant letters that said, "This is what happens when you try to control me. I am free." I downloaded absolutely every single story, every video, every photo, every text. I saved them in a secure folder. In my mind, the marriage was already legally and emotionally dead. All that was left was to sign the death certificate, and I was going to be the forensic examiner in charge of the autopsy. At 3 in the morning, the front door of the apartment flew open, banging against the entryway wall. Lorena stumbled in, dragging her shoes. She reeked of alcohol, cigarettes, and other people's sweat. Her makeup was smudged and her dress was disheveled. She saw me sitting in the living room, with the only light coming from a small reading lamp. She stopped, leaning against the wall so she wouldn't fall, and looked at me with a crooked smile, full of contempt and arrogance. "There you are, the little guard dog," she babbled, slurring her words. "Did you leave the club crying?" I looked at her in silence. My lack of reaction seemed to infuriate her more. "You're pathetic, Andres," she spat, taking an unsteady step into the living room. "You wanted me to be the good, boring wife. Well, I have news for you. All girls cheat. All of them. At least I had the balls to do it to your face so you learn your place." "Okay," I answered, in a tone so monotonous and cold that the sound seemed to bounce off the empty walls. "Understood, Lorena. Go to sleep." She stood in shock for a second, confused by my calmness. She expected a screaming match. Not getting one, she huffed in annoyance, threw her bag on the floor, and stumbled into the bedroom. 10 minutes later, I heard her heavy snoring. The clock read 3:15 in the morning. My shift had just begun. The first thing I did was go to the guest room. I grabbed 2 large suitcases and a couple of duffel bags. I started emptying the master closet. I didn't pack my things, I packed hers. I packed her clothes, her expensive shoes, her jewelry, her cosmetics. I put it all in the suitcases and black garbage bags. I stacked everything by the front door. I only left my clothes in the closet. Then, I went to my desk and opened my laptop. Lorena and I rented this apartment. The lease was in my name because, when we moved in, she didn't have a good enough credit history. I paid 80% of the monthly rent. She, when she remembered, would transfer me something to pay for electricity or the internet. I drafted a formal email to the building management and the landlord, stating that, due to a severe personal emergency, I would be exercising the early termination clause of the lease agreement, assuming the corresponding penalty out of my own pocket, and that I would vacate the property first thing Monday morning. Afterward, I reviewed the files I had downloaded. The videos of her kissing her ex, the videos of her dancing on top of strangers with the humiliating texts, and, most importantly, the video that one of her stupid friends had uploaded hours earlier, where Lorena was clearly seen yelling, "I'm going to drive my idiot husband crazy today." I created a cloud folder with all that material. Lorena worked in public relations for an agency that handled accounts for very conservative family and corporate brands. Her professional image depended on her being an impeccable and trustworthy person. Additionally, her family, especially her father and older brother, were extremely strict and religious people who had always treated me with great respect. I drafted a very polite email. "Dear family and friends of Lorena, out of respect for the time we have shared, I consider it fair to inform you directly that my marriage has come to an end due to irreconcilable differences. I am attaching the reasons for my decision to this message, to avoid misunderstandings, future lies, or false narratives about me. I wish you the best." I put her parents, her brother, her aunts and uncles in blind copy, and, as the coup de grace, the human resources director of her events agency, whose contact I had because I had met him at a year-end dinner. I scheduled the email to be sent at noon sharp on Saturday. At 6 in the morning, with the sun starting to light up the city, I called a trusted freight company I usually use to move spare parts. I paid them extra for the urgency. At 7, the truck was downstairs. I brought down my tools, my clothes, my TV, and the valuable things I had bought. I didn't leave anything of mine. The apartment was empty, except for the bed where she was still snoring, and the mountain of garbage bags and suitcases with her things by the door. I took a kitchen knife, cut a piece of packing tape, and stuck a note on the refrigerator door. "The lease is cancelled. You have until Monday to get your garbage bags out of this apartment. Do not contact me." I left my keys on the kitchen counter. I closed the door behind me. I drove to a temporary hotel I rented for a few days while I find a new place. I took another shower, ordered a good breakfast from room service, and went to sleep with a peace of mind I hadn't felt in years. The tumor had been removed by the roots. I woke up an hour ago. The clock read 1:30 in the afternoon. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. It was red hot. I literally had hundreds of notifications. Today at noon, the scheduled email was sent. My phone blew up with over 20 voicemails from Lorena, completely plunged into an absolute and primitive panic. I listened to the first one. Her voice was broken, drowning in hysterical crying, without a shred of the pride and arrogance she had at 3 in the morning. Andres, please answer me. My dad just called me. He told me I'm a disgrace, to never step foot in his house again. Andres, where are you? I woke up and there's nothing in the house. My things are in bags. Don't do this, I beg you. Please answer me. It was a stupid mistake from the alcohol. I love you. I listened to the second one. The agency called me. My boss saw the email. They just suspended me indefinitely for damaging the company's image with my public posts. Andres, you left me on the street. I have nowhere to go. The concierge says you canceled the lease. Have mercy, forgive me. I drank my coffee listening to each voice note as if it were classical music. The woman who said I was pathetic and who cheated on me to my face to teach me my place, was now crying over garbage bags in an empty apartment, without a job, without a family, and without a husband. I haven't answered her. I don't plan to. I am going to block her number as soon as I finish writing this, and I will hand everything over to my lawyer to process an express divorce for documented infidelity. If you guys have any ideas on what to do with her 2 toxic friends who helped record the humiliation, leave them in the comments. I'll be reading them. I have the names of their workplaces and their partners. I welcome creative suggestions. First update: exactly 1 week has passed since I left the keys on the kitchen counter and walked away from that apartment forever. I thank all the Reddit users who took the time to read my situation and, above all, those who left highly creative suggestions on what to do with the group of friends who chanted my public humiliation. I read every comment very carefully from my temporary hotel room. My mind, accustomed to diagnosing failures in refrigeration systems, needed to process the problem in parts. When an industrial compressor fails, you don't just change the broken part, you have to check the connected valves to make sure the contaminated refrigerant liquid doesn't ruin the new motor. Lorena's friends were the contaminated liquid. The main group was led by 2 women, Mariana and Paula. They were the ones who held the phones, who yelled, "He deserved it," and who encouraged my wife to kiss her ex-boyfriend right to my face. Mariana was engaged. She had spent 2 years organizing a wedding that would cost her fiancé, a software engineer named Hector, close to $30,000. Hector is a quiet, hard-working guy who rarely went out with them because Mariana told him they were exclusive girls' nights. On Tuesday afternoon, after my workday, I looked Hector up on a professional social network. I sent him a direct, formal message. I told him I had vital information regarding the integrity of the person he was about to sign a life contract with, and that I was asking for 20 minutes of his time at a coffee shop near his office. Hector accepted, intrigued and a little defensive. We met at 6 in the evening. He arrived in a suit, frowning. I introduced myself, we ordered 2 coffees, and, without preamble or drama, I took out my tablet. Hector, we don't know each other well, but I was Lorena's husband. Mariana is my wife's best friend, I told him in a slow voice. Last Friday, Lorena was unfaithful to me to my face at a nightclub. But I didn't summon you here to talk about my problems. I summoned you because I believe an honest man shouldn't walk down the aisle blindfolded. I hit play on the video I myself had downloaded from the public stories. Hector watched the screen in silence. He saw my wife kissing another man, but most importantly, he heard the voice of his fiancée, Mariana. He heard her screaming like a madwoman, celebrating the infidelity, insulting me behind my back, and recording the scene to humiliate me. Hector saw his future wife justify and applaud the destruction of a marriage as if it were a high school joke. The blood drained from Hector's face. He stared at the black screen when the video ended. "Tell me who you're with and I'll tell you who you are," Hector muttered, running his hands over his face. If she considers cheating on a husband to his face a reason for celebration, what awaits me when I turn my back? That's the question I would ask myself, I replied, putting my tablet away in my backpack. I sent the file to your private email a minute ago. Do with that information what you consider right for your future. I stood up, paid the bill, and left. The next morning, I found out through a mutual friend that Hector went home that same night, demanded that Mariana return the engagement ring, and cancelled all payments for the reception hall and catering service. Mariana tried to justify it by saying, it was just a drunken joke, but Hector left her talking to herself, packed his bags, and moved into his parents' house. The $30,000 wedding turned to dust. Paula's turn was much more clinical. Paula wasn't engaged, but she worked as a human resources supervisor in a very conservative private clinic. Her job involved evaluating the ethics and behavior of the medical staff. A monumental hypocrisy. She was the one who uploaded the original video to her social media with her public profile, and in the background of the video, she could be heard screaming obscenities. I created a disposable and encrypted email address. I wrote a message addressed to the clinic's board of directors and the medical director. Dear Sirs, as a patient of your institution, I am deeply concerned about the kind of people in charge of evaluating the ethics of your healthcare staff. I am attaching evidence of the public behavior of your human resources supervisor, promoting harassment, infidelity, and public mockery of third parties in a state of extreme intoxication. I trust you will take the appropriate measures to protect the prestige of your clinic. I attached the uncensored video. A few hours after sending the email, Paula was summoned by management. She was suspended without pay while they initiated an internal investigation for damaging the corporate image on public platforms. With the secondary system purged, I focused on the main problem. Lorena. On Monday at 8 in the morning, the deadline expired for her to take her garbage out of the apartment. The building management, notified of my lease cancellation and that I had already paid the termination fee, sent the concierge to change the lock on the property. Lorena tried to barricade herself in. She refused to open the door, yelling from inside that she had common law rights. Management didn't waste time and called the local police. 2 officers arrived at the floor, knocked on the door, and explained that, since her name was not on the lease or the utility bills, she was committing the crime of trespassing. They forced her out. She had to drag her 5 heavy suitcases and 10 huge black garbage bags down the building hallway, crying under the gaze of neighbors leaving for work. Since she had no money in her accounts, I cut off the shared cards and her father refused to give her a dime. She had to pawn an expensive watch at a nearby shop that same morning to afford a moving van to take her to the cheapest boarding house she could find in the suburbs. Cornered and desperate, on Wednesday afternoon she made the mistake of looking for me at my work. I was in the marshalling yard of the refrigeration plant, checking the pressure levels of an industrial unit, when the security guard radioed me saying my wife was at the main gate and refusing to leave. I walked toward the entrance. It was bitingly cold, typical of winter in this area. Lorena was standing by the metal gate. She was wearing the same wrinkled clothes from 3 days ago, she had no makeup, and her eyes were bloodshot. She was shaking, but I couldn't tell if it was from the weather or from withdrawal from her old life. Andres, she whispered when she saw me approach. She grabbed onto the iron bars of the entrance. Please, listen to me. 1 minute, just 1 minute. I stopped 2 meters away, in my work uniform, my safety boots, and with my arms crossed. I looked at her with the same expression I used to look at a broken pressure gauge. Talk fast. My time costs money, I instructed her with a hoarse voice. I lost everything. She started crying, a hoarse and ugly cry. They won't receive me at the agency. My friends hate me because they say it's my fault Mariana lost Hector and Paula got suspended. My family turned their backs on me. Dad told me I'm a whore and to change my last name. I'm sleeping in a room that smells like dampness with people I don't even know. It's a very detailed damage report, Lorena. But I still don't understand why you're giving this information to me, I replied, keeping my gaze fixed on her teary eyes. Because you are my husband. Because I love you. The club thing was stupid, a drunken game for attention because I felt you didn't value me. Roberto means nothing. I tried to look for him and the bastard laughed at me and slammed the door in my face. You're the only one I have left, Andres. Get me out of there, I beg you, forgive me. The audacity of begging for asylum from the same man you told to his face that all girls cheat to teach you your place is something that exceeds any psychiatric diagnosis. You told me I was a pathetic little guard dog, I reminded her, without raising my voice's volume. You told me you cheated on me to my face because you wanted me to learn my place. Well, Lorena, I learned my place. My place is far away from you, with my dignity intact and my bank account safe. Your place is exactly where you are right now, on the street, begging for attention and reaping the garbage you sowed. Don't be so cruel. I'm going to freeze to death out there, she screamed, clinging to the bars. I turned around to go back into the plant. If you get cold, find a nightclub and dance on top of a stranger. That seemed to make you very warm last Friday, I told her over my shoulder. I signaled the security guard not to let her in under any circumstances and went back to my work. That was the last time I heard her voice directly. The silence on my phone since I blocked her permanently from all communication channels is the most beautiful sound I have ever experienced. Second update: 8 months have passed since the closure of that lease agreement and the subsequent purge at my workplace door. Time has a fascinating way of settling the dust and showing the true state of things once the storm passes. Today was the final divorce mediation, and I need to leave this last record to close the file permanently. The legal process was tedious due to state bureaucracy, but extremely clean on my part. Since the apartment was rented and we had no children or real estate in both names, the division came down to bank accounts and debts. My personal savings accounts were bulletproof. She tried to demand compensatory alimony, claiming I was the main provider for the household and that her firing had left her in a state of vulnerability. We sat in the family mediation office this morning. The place was aseptic, illuminated by fluorescent lights that made everything look pale. I arrived with my lawyer, wearing a clean shirt, serene. Lorena arrived alone. She couldn't afford a private lawyer and had to resort to a public defender who clearly had no interest in her case. Seeing her walk in, I felt a genuine shock, not of pain, but visual impact. The woman who a year ago spent hundreds of dollars on facial treatments and humiliated people for their clothes, seemed to have aged 10 years in 8 months. Her hair roots were dark and neglected, her skin dull, chronic bags under her eyes, and she was wearing a generic sweater that made it obvious she had lost a lot of weight. There was no trace left of the arrogance or the PR girl who thought she owned the city. She sat across from me. She didn't dare look up. Her hands shook as she held a cheap plastic pen. My lawyer presented the case to deny the compensatory alimony. He handed over the proof of public adultery, which in my country annuls certain benefits, demonstrated that her firing was a product of her own moral negligence by posting inappropriate material linked to the agency, and presented the records showing that I had assumed the entirety of the credit card debt she maxed out to maintain her lifestyle before we separated, in exchange for her not asking me for a single dime of my savings. The mediator read the terms. Lorena's public defender nodded, knowing they had no legal basis to demand more money. Mrs. Lorena, the mediator said, looking at her over his glasses. If you agree with the conditions of separation of assets and the waiver of alimony based on Mr. Andres' assumption of debts, sign on the last page. Lorena took the paper. A heavy, lonely tear fell onto the legal document, smudging the ink of the fine print. Andres, she whispered, without looking at me, are you really going to leave me like this? With nothing? I watched her. My technician's mind searched for some sign of remorse in me, but the emotional system towards her was completely disconnected. It was like looking at a burnt-out appliance that can no longer be fixed. I am leaving you with the same dignity with which you left me at that nightclub, Lorena, I answered, my voice firm, without resentment, but without an ounce of pity. The only difference is that you chose your misery. Sign the papers. She swallowed hard. Her trembling hand scribbled an illegible signature on the sheet. The mediator stamped the document. We were officially divorced. I stood up, shook hands with the mediator, said goodbye to my lawyer in the hallway, and went out into the street. The morning air was cold and clean. I found out about the general situation of those involved through gossip that inevitably reaches my ears. Roberto, the ex-boyfriend she kissed at the club to mock me, turned out to be an absolute fraud. When Lorena went looking for him at his apartment a few days after ending up on the street, she discovered that Roberto lived with an older woman who supported him. The woman found out about Lorena's visit, there was a screaming match in the building hallway, and Roberto's girlfriend shoved her out. Roberto blocked Lorena's number that same day to protect his own parasitic lifestyle. As for her accomplice friends, Mariana is still single and living at her parents' house. Hector moved to another province and is doing wonderfully. Paula was fired from the clinic after the internal investigation concluded, and now works managing shifts at a car wash owned by an uncle of hers. Lorena is still living in that miserable shared boarding house. She works as a telephone operator in a customer service center on the graveyard shift, receiving complaints from angry people. She no longer posts stories on social media dancing or proclaiming to be free. Her ego was crushed by the crushing weight of real life. As for me, life rewarded my patience. At the refrigeration company, they valued my ability to solve crises under extreme pressure and promoted me to regional maintenance supervisor. With the salary increase and my savings intact, I put down the initial payment to buy a small but own house, with a large backyard. I have started dating again, but taking it easy. I met a woman who works as an antique furniture restorer. She is someone who values silence, manual labor, and mutual respect. She has no interest in nightclubs or posting posed photos. We spend the weekends cooking and sanding old wood to give it a new life. It's a peace I never experienced in my 3 years of marriage to walking vanity. To anyone going through a situation where your partner humiliates you, triangulates you with an ex, or belittles you in front of their friends, do not fall into the trap of exploding. Narcissists feed on your screams, record your reactions, and use them to play the victim. Don't yell, don't cry in front of them, cool the system down, turn yourselves into icebergs. Gather the evidence in absolute silence, close the financial valves, and, when the exact moment arrives, cut off the supply suddenly and without warning. The most devastating revenge you can inflict on someone who lives off appearances and other people's money, is to return them to their harsh reality and force them to pay their own bills. My life belongs to me again. The engine is running perfectly. Over and out, Reddit.